This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Welcome to the Hindu's In Focus podcast. I'm Zubaida Hamid, your host for today. The central government a few days ago banned 156 fixed dose combination drugs or FDCs. An FDC is a drug that has more than one active ingredient, two or more drugs together in a single pill, capsule, or shot. This is the latest in a series of bans brought in by the centre. Last year, 14 FDCs were banned, and a total of 499 have been banned since 2014. Why is this happening? Expert committees of the government have said that these FDCs are irrational or they have no therapeutic value for patients. In fact, many FDCs are known to contribute to a growing public health problem in India, that of antimicrobial resistance. So then why is the Indian market dominated by FDCs? Why are there FDCs in India that are not found anywhere else in the world? How are even unapproved and banned FDCs often found in the market? We delve into these questions and more with S. Srinivasan, co-convenor of the All India Drug Action Network. Welcome to the Hindu's In Focus podcast, Mr. Srinivasan.
Thank you.
Sir, could you explain to us what a fixed dose combination or FDC drug is?
Well, as the name says, FDC is fixed dose combination. It's a combination of two medicines or drugs. And we will use the term drugs in this, not the other kind of drugs, medicines. If A is a drug and B is a drug, A plus B is a fixed dose combination. For example, paracetamol is a medicine, ibuprofen is a medicine. So when you combine paracetamol plus ibuprofen, as in the popular medicine, Combiflam, so that is a FDC, fixed dose combination.
Could it include more than two drugs as well?
Oh, it can include more than two. In fact, the industry runs a riot by having 10 medicines at a time. Which is not at all desirable.
So any drug basically that has more than one drug ingredient can be called an FDC, correct?
Yes.
Tell us, sir, one of the studies have found and also estimates indicate that India has among the highest number of FDCs in the pharmaceutical market anywhere in the world. Why is this number so high in India and why is this unique to the Indian situation?
I don't know about this study, but it's quite probably it's correct because most of the other well-regulated countries, well-regulated from the point of view of pharmaceuticals, like US, the EU, Japan, etc., they don't have this amount of FDCs. And why is it so? You're asking the question. I think there was a period from around the 80s where there was a general boom, 70s to 80s and 90s, when we were on the way to become pharmacy, quote unquote, of the world, of the developing world at least. And in that time, there was regulation was not very strict as desirable, and manufacturers took advantage. See, the normal process of introducing a new medicine in this country is to submit the data to the central government organization, which is called CDSCO, Central Drug Standards Organization, and then get an approval after the CDSCO approves it. After it runs through some expert committee, they say, okay, this drug can be allowed. Then the manufacturer takes that medicine application to the state regulatory authorities who will give a manufacturing license. Now, what they have done in the 80s, 90s, many manufacturers, they straight away went to the licensing authority for a manufacturing license. They didn't bother to check out with the central government authorities, which is the Drug Controller General of India and CDSCO. Also, the state licensing authority should have asked, have you got a marketing approval from the central government authorities? They didn't ask that question. So, manufacturers took advantage of this laissez-faire. And so a lot of FDCs got approved or manufactured. Many of them did not bother to get check out on the rationality of the FDC because it didn't go through a bunch of experts to say whether it's okay or not okay. And the Indian pharma industry was zooming and it's still zooming. And so there was a kind of a general, what I should say, celebration of plenty. And so they put a lot of, and they also claimed a lot of things that more than one medicine to particular FDC, you'll get, it's better for you, etc. The claims were always controversial. They were contentious and nobody bothered. And in fact, also I should say the other important player in this is doctors, the medical profession, didn't raise alarm about this, except a few, with an honorable few, I should say. These are all the reasons. Glut of FDCs, which are not rational, only few of them are rational. In fact, the National List of Essential Medicines, 2022, it has about 384 essential drugs, out of which there are only 22 FDCs. And since it is in the National List of Essential Medicines, those 22 FDCs should be considered rational, scientific.
So basically, the pharma industry was booming. There was not much regulation or oversight from the government, and FDCs began to flood the market, correct?
And also medical associations, professional associations, Indian Medical Association, Association of Pediatricians, and so on and so forth. There are so many. It's their duty also is to ask the questions, isn't it? They didn't ask the questions, with due honorable exceptions.
So was there also a price element involved? Were FDCs also being manufactured to this extent in order to escape from the ceiling prices set by the government for drugs?
Yeah, but you see, that time, the price control was not like today. We have price control on 384 medicines. But then in the 80s and 90s, far less number were under price control. And yes, but they were not. So it must have been about 10 to 5% of the market. Even today, if you really stretch it, about 20% of the Indian market is under price regulation. But what they claimed was it's more effective. Basically, it became costlier. And they said, I'm giving you, instead of giving, I'm giving you one medicine for one problem, I'm giving you two medicines for more than one problem. So and also they added that therefore I'm making the price costly. So they were making more money, FDCs, by adding the extra rational or irrational. So that is the main reason. But today, yes, you're right. Today, if you want to escape the price control from the NLEM 2022, I will just add something like caffeine to it, get an approval from the appropriate authorities, and therefore I will be out of price control. And today also, I should add an example. If paracetamol 500 mg is mentioned in the National List of Essential Medicines, therefore it's under price control. So I want to get out of price control, I just have to make it paracetamol 501 mg. I'm out of price control. Or I have to, now they have made, they are selling paracetamol 1000 mg. It's irrational, but they have approved it. The government has approved it, and they are out of price control.
So just by changing the dosage or adding one or more ingredients, you can basically call it a new drug and escape price control, correct?
Yes, escape price control of the 384 drugs in the NLEM.
Got it. So tell us, in what situations are FDCs useful, and in what situations are they considered what the government calls irrational?
The FDCs are useful, like for those 22 FDCs, for certain conditions where the ingredients are almost always necessary. For example, ORS, necessary for reducing dehydration, reducing diarrhea, etc. In that case, those ingredients are supposed to be called synergistic. So whenever the constituents of an FDC are synergistic, then I think, and it has a better effect than one drug per se, then I think FDCs are called rational. That is the simplest way of saying it. Why FDCs are irrational, I'll tell you also. If that medicines have something called the dose response curve, bioavailability. So when you combine two medicines, they should have approximately the same bioavailability. They should peak in the blood at about the same time. But most medicines, on the average, you combine them, they don't peak in the blood or about the same time. And therefore, it is irrational. Whatever may be the other reasons also.
So that makes sense. Basically, the drugs don't act well together in the body, and therefore that's not necessary. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. Also, to check for quality, like this single ingredient medicines are all mentioned in the Indian pharmacopoeia, and they run to the about 800 to 900 molecules. Now, and the process of testing for quality, about 23, 24 parameters are to be checked when I check for quality. Now, when I combine, I don't have any criteria how to check for quality of the combination because it is not mentioned in the pharmacopoeia. I go by the say so of the manufacturer. The manufacturer gives a methodology for testing the combination, which the bunch of experts who hear them out have no time or no facilities to check whether the manufacturer's methodology for testing quality of the FDC is correct or not. So it becomes complicated. This is for two products, two ingredients. There are FDCs with 10 vitamins and all kinds of things, and it becomes enormously complicated.
So there are no standards available to check whether these ingredients work well together or whether they're even really required to treat a disease, correct?
Yeah, I don't think anybody has done the research which should worth the name most of the time, except in those 22 combination drugs, enough research has been done.
Tell us a little bit about when irrational FDCs are available to this extent in the market, what does it do to the public health of the country? We all know that antimicrobial resistance, for one, is a huge and growing problem in India. Do the FDCs contribute to this?
Yes. Because you see, you have, firstly, we should recognize that FDCs there are fixed dose combinations of antibiotics, of analgesics, or of anti-diabetics, and so on. These are therapeutic classes. And also there are FDCs across therapeutic classes, antibiotic plus analgesic, antibiotic plus, say, kind of some cardiovascular drug, and so on and so forth. So, and even among cardiovascular, there are different types of, there's anti-cholesterol, there is anti-blood pressure, and so on. You combine these two drugs, it's difficult to check out something. Mostly it is not necessary. So what happens is the patient or the user consumer, when I take 2 drugs or 3 drugs or 10 drugs, when I require only one, I unnecessarily end up consuming more medicines. Whatever you say, every medicine has its side effects and adverse effects. Now, people take, for pain, they take combiflam. Well, only you need to take paracetamol. You don't need to take brufen. So when you keep ingesting brufen, you get the adverse effects of brufen when you're taking combiflam when you don't even need it. Similarly, when you take paracetamol when you don't need, you end up ingesting paracetamol, which has got hepatic problems and so on and so forth if you take in a large amount. So you're making life complicated for the patient. And in any way, any medicine, any allopathic medicine taken in large quantities gives you problems. So I think the doctor's role should be to simplify treatment and trying to convince the patient to use as little medicines as possible.
Speaking about the doctor's role, why do these FDCs get prescribed a lot, and why does that happen?
I don't know. I think if doctors are prescribing a lot, except rational FDCs, which means doctors are not doing their homework, or they are convinced because their education on these kind of irrational FDCs comes from the medical representatives, and especially the medical representatives from a big company or a famous company. The doctor tends to believe that the big company cannot go wrong, which is not true. That is not the history of big companies in the world. So whereas the companies are out to maximize their profit by producing all kinds of medicines, rational, irrational, etc. So one is, I think doctors need to do their homework. I'm not saying all doctors don't do the homework. There are quite a few doctors who do their homework. But see, if if you say, even if I'm a very scientific, rational doctor, I prescribe something, say drug X. So I go to the to the retail pharmacist. That fellow says, "Sir, I don't have this drug X, but I have X plus Y, and it is much better, sir." Huh? And he may do it deliberately because X plus Y gives him more return and more commission than just X. So these kind of factors are there, and therefore, also most consumers, when they go to the pharmacist, they have heard about X plus Y, but they have not heard of X. Huh? Why is the doctor has not prescribed X, only prescribed X plus Y, is only prescribing X? So he tells the pharmacy to the pharmacist, "Give me that FDC, don't give me a single drug." So all these kind of all various stakeholders' reactions, etc., to ensure that FDCs tend to get sold. Very few doctors take the time to educate the patient by, don't take this thing, don't take the FDC, and take only those FDCs which I give you. So there are various stakeholders doing with their own acting in their agency, whatever, right or wrong. See, you asked the question, I think, or somebody I read yesterday, or maybe you said, about 50% of the sales of India are FDCs. And in a study I did about 3-4 years back, 50% of this 50%, that is 50% is FDCs, 50% is single ingredients. And mostly they are likely to be rational. Half of this 50% FDCs are rational. So basically, to about 25%, at least 25% of the market is flooded with irrational FDCs. And today, India's domestic sale is about 2 trillion rupees. So that is 2 followed by 12 zeros, or 2 lakh crores. So 25% of 2 trillion, half a trillion. That is the amount of irrational FDCs being consumed. They should be thrown out of the market. Of course, pharmaceutical sales will fall drastically. There needs to be a correction in the market, but nobody wants a correction because the shareholders don't want a correction in the market because they are interested in returns to their investment. So all these factors are there. But I think if you have a political will, if you want to clean up the market, you can do it, and government should do it, unless the government is looking for some other considerations from pharma companies.
Speaking of the government, since 2014, the center has banned 499 FDCs, the latest being this ban on 156 FDCs this month. But why is this a piecemeal strategy? You ban like 100, then you ban another 100, and you ban a third number of 100. Do there need to be changes in the norms for approval of such drugs in the first place?
We have to go through the due process of law. Like, even if I have, for example, a pharmaceutical company has produced suo moto an irrational medicine, not taking the permission from the appropriate authorities, I cannot just send him to jail because there is no law which says that if you make an irrational FDC, I'll send you, you'll go to jail. You have to you have to sort of comply with the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. I had to go through the due process, the Indian Penal Code, and so on and so forth. And what the pharmaceutical companies will do is that they will go to the court, hire some very good lawyers. In fact, now with this 156 FDCs which has been banned, already pharma companies, a couple of them have gone to the court, Delhi High Court. And some of them have asked, okay, we agree with the ban, but at least don't take any quote-unquote coercive actions against us, which means that please allow us to sell whatever stock we have. And then if you want, you implement the ban. All these kind of pleas that they have made in the court. And this is what they have done with the last, from 2014. The mess is not to totally clean out the irrational FDCs. The mess was the Kokte committee's brief was that there are this lot of these FDC fellows, rational, irrational, who are manufacturing thanks to the license given by the state licensing authorities, but without the permission of the central government, where the central government's experts haven't checked out on this rationality of this FDCs. Therefore, what should we do? We should so please find out a way finding out how many of these FDCs with permission, without permission of the central government in the market is rational. How many are irrational? Those which are rational will be given enough time to produce data, etc., etc. Those who are irrational should be asked to produce. Be given a they were given it. We may be mistaken as experts, but if you have some data, please give it. And we would like to look at it. So they gave a lot of these fellows were claiming their irrational FDCs were rational. They gave a lot of data to the experts, and the experts found they were not satisfied, and they were asked to stop manufacturing. That is what, in this case, ban means. Of course, the criteria applied by the experts would be that normally you don't mix A plus B. This is totally unscientific. Those kind of criteria also have been used by the experts, and they recommended around March 2016, 344 FDCs to be banned. Okay, and how many FDCs were submitted for double check to the experts by the companies? 6,000 FDCs, 6,000 to 7,000. Out of 6,000, in the first tranche, they did 344 FDCs. They asked to be banned. Now, there are also a lot of other FDCs. In fact, the co-convenor committee made 4 categories. One is this 344 definitely they are irrational. They have to go. So they recommended in March 2016. Then they also said there is a category B, which we need more data, and so they are asking these companies to produce more data on these FDCs. So that postponed kick the ball down the line in terms of time. Then they said category 3 is rational. So they can produce, they can submit what you normally would do, the appropriate paperwork, and then you can continue market. And in category 4, they said we need further post-marketing surveillance, phase 4 trials, etc., before we approve or disapprove this rationality or otherwise of these services. So these were all done in phases. So in this 344 FDCs, companies immediately went to the court, got a stay order. Several companies. First, what happened is also the companies were clever. They would get ask for a stay order in Madras High Court. They would ask for a stay order in Bombay High Court, Calcutta High Court, so that the government can keep running. So, but what the Supreme Court did was that they said they said all the petitions in the states will be transferred to the Supreme Court. But still, it took about 1 year, 2 years. And then they appointed a second committee because the Supreme Court got convinced by some of the arguments of the drug companies that what the drug companies said, the co-convenor committee explanations are not clear. They are very telegraphic, which it was actually, to be honest. But these people were not really, they knew what was the reason. The telegraphic, but we don't understand this. So the Supreme Court judge in this case, first it went to the Delhi High Court. They got a stay order in Delhi High Court. And then the government took the matter to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court got convinced by this arguments of these pharma companies. And in fact, the judge was this very famous judge, Nariman, the junior, the son. And we also intervened in that. And we supported the government. We didn't support the pharma. So you're all right. Since these reasons given are telegraphic, what Nariman said is, please, and also some of the arguments are wrong according to the companies. So let the government appoint another committee. And this time it was headed by this well-known pharmacologist. So another committee was appointed, in which we also submitted data. And in September 2018, this report came out. In fact, this committee basically almost completely agreed with co-convenor report. And in fact, their reasons given for agreeing also were telegraphic a little bit. So again, these people went to the High Court, Delhi High Court, questioning and interrogating and so on and so forth. Every time a thing comes out, they go to the court, they postpone the implementation, or they may, or they see to it that matter doesn't come up quickly. So this is why it's a long process. In fact, I have written a piece in the EPW called The Endless Rounds of Litigation. I'll send you that.
It does seem to be a long saga. So basically, what happens, even though these FDCs, the center brings out a ban notification and says these FDCs are banned, they continue to be available in the market?
See, if there is a stay on the entire process, they will continue to be available in the market.
Even though the central government thinks that they are irrational and should not be there.
Yeah. But what happens is, there's an interesting thing happens. For example, X, which was there in the it's chlorpheniramine maleate, which is an antihistaminic, anti-allergic, plus codeine, manufactured by Pfizer, I think, marketed by Pfizer. This was also banned. So, but Pfizer went and protested, but quietly, even while they're protesting and they were arguing in the government, arguing in the Supreme Court and Delhi High Court, Pfizer changed the formulation. They dropped codeine phosphate because it is a kind of a narcotic, and you can't give a narcotic to children, but it's a cough syrup. So they changed it to something else, and they retained that CPM, chlorpheniramine plus dextromethorphan. So, see, this is the cleverness. They didn't want. They agreed. They knew that this combination of codeine plus CPM, chlorpheniramine maleate, they're going to lose anyway. But let us keep fighting, because if we yield easily, the government will have its run. Why should we give the government a hard time, kind of a thing? And then the DCGA is supposed to get will be involved more, will be kept busy more, etc., etc. So this is the game they play, and so today you will not get the old combination of Avil plus codeine in the market. In fact, it didn't. March 2016 it was banned. You were not getting it in May 2016 in the market. But some companies, they think they are making a lot of money on this particular FDC. So why should we let it go without a fight? And so lawyers benefit, company lawyers benefit in this process. The system is stretched, and the DCGA is kept busy. The Supreme Court is kept busy. And in that process, if you get other more so-called important issues like Kashmir or something, that what do you call it? That citizenship CAA, that priority will be taken for by those issues, and this will be on the wayside. This is why it happens. This whole thing is dragged down, so on.
Last question. So what happens? How is it possible to regulate? You talked a little bit about that, quality and manufacturing standards for FDCs. You said that in general, when so many drugs are used together in combination into one, there is no real manufacturing standard or quality control. Is it even possible to monitor adverse effects for such drugs?
Impossible. Well, they're supposed to, because that is what the phase 4 trial and post-marketing surveillance, which is specified in the Drugs and Cost Act. They're supposed to do that. But practically, I have not seen any post-marketing surveillance or phase 4 trials for most drugs. I've been in this business for about 40 years. So I have not seen it, because it is difficult. And it will also add to the cost of the cost for the manufacturer, which will pass it on to the consumer. So there are a lot of these kind of repercussions.
Yeah, so we don't know. So we don't know that what adverse effects are happening and who they're happening to and why they're happening.
There are some FDCs with 10 drugs. It's impossible. It's impossible unless you do a study, properly done study. You can only guess. For example, there's one FDC in this 156. I was looking at it. It's a combination of antimony tartrate plus ferrous sulfate. Now, the WHO has said, if at all you're going to have an FDC, iron sulfate, or you should have an FDC of iron sulfate plus folic acid. That is what most pregnant women take. Or at the most, you can add B12. So here's the antimony tartrate. Antimony tartrate is used for totally something else. I think sometimes it is used for if you got a poison injection to take it out, etc., etc. So it is totally irrational. What was your question? I forgot. This was his answer to your question.
The fact that the drug manufacturers don't invest in studies to even find out if there are adverse events when it comes to taking these medications.
Not only drug manufacturer, the DCGI will say, hey, where is your phase 4 study? Hey, where is your post-marketing surveillance? He should be asking these questions. He is not asked because he probably is very busy. It is true that Indian pharma has exploded and DCGI very busy, but there is no excuse. I mean, at least you can see in India, the assumption of people who violate the law or who take the government for granted is that the government will not, the appropriate authorities in the government will not ask questions because they are so busy.
So basically, there is no oversight, there is no regulation, and so companies can do whatever they want.
There's not sufficient oversight.
There's not
Task is so vast because there's so many medicines and so many brand names and so many dosages. It's even say just paracetamol, just it's 500 mg, which is a kind of rational dosage. There are at least 135 to 200 brands, rational brands. So to monitor this is a big exercise, but I think it's possible. And do you know that some 1 trillion share market prices are monitored every day? Why can't we do this? There are ways of doing this.
Thank you so much for speaking.
Just to go back to there is no law. There's no law today. And if they pass a law, for example, they say we consider these combinations generally or as unscientific, and therefore our government is passing an order. Say they passed an order on January 2025. So by December, we'll be giving you 1 year to withdraw all these combinations. And if you don't withdraw, you'll go to jail. Now, if this will sound a little bit arbitrary, and good, clever lawyers can prove this is kind of totally arbitrary, dictatorial, and this is does not follow due process of law. It violates the right to business of pharmaceutical companies and so on. And probably they will win. Therefore, unless you have a law like that, which Bangladesh did in 1982, Bangladesh has incidentally at least had the best drug policy in the world. And they've removed at one stroke, they removed a lot of irrational medicines. Only rational single ingredient medicines are generally available in Bangladesh.
So it is possible and it is doable, and we should also be doing it.
Yeah, but they had a dictator, Shah.
Right. Thank you so much for speaking to us today, Mr. Srinivasan.
Yeah, thank you.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.